Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine for a moment a phenomenon, an idea, maybe a behavior, or even a disease that seems like it's teetering, right on the very edge of vanishing, only to suddenly, boom, explode into a full-blown epidemic.
Right. Or think about a massive societal shift, something that feels completely impossible.
Yeah, totally out of reach.
And then it happens practically overnight. Today, we're going to plunge into the surprising, often kind of counterintuitive, and sometimes, let's be honest, unsettling forces that really dictate how these things move through our world.
Exactly. You've almost certainly heard the phrase, the tipping point.
Right.
It's kind of everywhere now, right?
Oh, absolutely. Part of the language, it suggests that, that magical moment when everything just flips.
But what if that popular idea,
Yeah.
what if it's actually way more intricate, more human, maybe, and sometimes a lot more dangerous than we think?
That's what we're digging into. Our deep dive today is built on this really fascinating stack of sources. We've got an author looking back really candidly on his own famous work.
Yeah, that's interesting in itself.
It is. And it's going to challenge, I think, a lot of our assumptions about how contagions actually work in our lives and society.
For sure. And our mission here, as always, is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge from these sources to help you understand the hidden gears, really, behind these social epidemics and the surprising role we all play, often without realizing it.
Today's journey is going to take us deep. We'll look at individual actions, sure, but also these pervasive community overstories. These almost invisible narratives.
Overstories. Okay.
Yeah, and hidden numerical thresholds, these tipping points that can either, accelerate or just stop an epidemic dead in its tracks.
And we're going to unpack what the author now calls the revenge aspect. This is crucial.
It really is. The idea that the very tools, the insights we develop to make things better.
Yeah, the positive change stuff.
Exactly. They can sometimes be turned against us.
Yeah.
Or they just backfire spectacularly with these devastating unintended consequences. It's a really profound thought that kind of hangs over this whole discussion.
It really does. Okay, let's get into it. So let's start with that personal reflection. The author we're focusing on today, 25 years ago, he publishes The Tipping Point, How Little Things Make a Big Difference. And it just took off, didn't it?
Oh, completely. It was a phenomenon. Tipping point became, like you said, part of everyday conversation. He even joked to be on his tombstone.
Oh, yeah.
It absolutely captured something in the air, the zeitgeist. And looking back, he says it was, at its heart, a hopeful book.
Right, it offered a kind of recipe.
A recipe, exactly. A recipe for how to promote positive change, all built on this really appealing idea that little things make a big difference. He talks about writing it, in his apartment, mixing self-doubt with these moments of pure excitement.
And a classic writer's struggle.
Totally. Wrestling with how to even write a book. And then, kind of ironically, it grew just like the epidemics he was writing about.
Slowly, then all at once.
Precisely. At first, gradually, then all in a rush, as he put it. I mean, Bill Clinton was referencing it in speeches. Its influence was just massive.
But time, it changes how you see things.
Right, yeah.
Even your own work.
Absolutely. And that's what's so interesting here. The author rereads his own book a quarter century later, and he's constantly asking himself, what about this bit? How could I possibly have left that out?
That takes some honesty.
It really does. He realized his opinions, his tastes, even his fundamental understanding of the world had just evolved profoundly. He says he never really stopped arguing with himself about these mysteries, how things spread.
Which is probably why this new book exists.
Exactly. Revenge of the Tipping Point is the direct result of that deep personal wrestling match. It's a fresh set of theories, new stories, different arguments about the strange pathways, as he calls them, that ideas and behaviors follow.
And the core insight, this revenge idea, it's kind of chilling.
It is chillingly simple, but so potent. The very same tools we learn, the understanding we gain about how things spread, how influence works, they can also be used against us. Just think about that. It's not just academic, it's a real dilemma. Public health, social movements, politics.
You see it everywhere once you look.
Right. Every bit of knowledge about influencing people has this built-in double edge. How many times have we seen a policy, a well-meaning one, just completely backfire because the mechanisms weren't fully grasped, or worse, somebody deliberately twisted them?
That's a heavy thought. Knowledge itself having this moral weight.
Yeah.
Which leads us right into this idea he talks about, the passive voice of responsibility.
Yes. So, picture this. A virtual congressional hearing, kind of like we've all seen recently.
Too familiar, yeah.
Right. It's set during the peak of some devastating public health crisis. The sources hint it's the opioid crisis, but really the feeling, the questions, They're universal.
Okay.
3 witnesses, all tied to a big corporation implicated in the crisis. They're subpoenaed. It's an hour in. Everyone's in their little Zoom boxes, the bookshelves, the kitchens.
Got it.
The chairwoman, you can hear the frustration in her voice, asks them straight up, apologize. Apologize to the American people for all the pain, the
That
tragedy.
made the responses.
Carefully calibrated. Witness, #1. An older woman, clearly wealthy, seems flustered, says she'd be happy to apologize for the pain, but kind of implies she already has, maybe through lawyers or PR.
Right, the non-apology apology.
Pretty much. Then, witness #2, a young guy, well-manicured, the heir apparent to this empire. He echoes her sentiment, claims deep moral responsibility for the suffering.
But there's always a but.
Always. But then insists his family, the board, they acted legally and ethically the whole time.
And here comes the language part, right?
This is critical. The key phrase from witness #2 is, our product has been associated with abuse and addiction.
Has been associated with passive voice.
Bingo. A sharp politician on the committee jumps right on it, points it out. You're using the passive voice there, which implies somehow you and your family weren't aware or that it just happened to your product.
Instead of we marketed it in a way that led to this.
Precisely. It's such a telling linguistic move, designed to acknowledge the problem exists, but without accepting any direct cause, any culpability, distancing.
Wow. Yeah, that really sets the stage.
It absolutely does. For a much deeper, much more uncomfortable conversation about who's really responsible when these epidemics take hold. Ideas, behaviors, diseases. Doesn't matter.
And the politician keeps pushing.
Doesn't let up. Points out, no executive ever went to jail. The company never admitted wrongdoing in the DOJ settlement, despite the horrific human cost.
So the implication is?
We need that hard conversation about epidemics. We've got to get past the passive voice, got to acknowledge our own role in creating them, and maybe even manipulating them subtly or not so subtly.
That passive voice lets everyone off the hook, psychologically, legally.
Right. But choices were made. Actions were taken, and those actions had consequences that just rippled outwards like a wildfire. It forces you to ask, when does responsibility shift? From the user to the maker, especially when the maker knows how these things spread.
Okay, that's a serious challenge. Let's zoom out now and talk about the power of place. And this concept you mentioned, the overstory. Explain that a bit more.
Yeah, think about a really dense forest. The overstory isn't just the tallest trees, right?
It's the whole canopy.
Exactly. That upper layer of leaves, branches, its size, its density, how high it is, it affects everything underneath it. The light, what plants can grow, how animals behave. It sets the conditions.
Okay, I get the metaphor. So for a community...
It's the same idea. A community's overstory isn't the written rules. It's not what people consciously talk about. It's more pervasive, an unconscious narrative, a set of norms that defines that place.
The unspoken understanding. Shared values.
All of that. The collective assumptions that shape what's normal, what's acceptable, what you can even imagine doing there. And the author argues it's really, really powerful.
So this explains why places close to each other can be so different.
That's the small area variation idea. Why maybe a Waldorf school with its unique philosophy might have totally different vaccination rates than another private school nearby.
Or healthcare practices.
Yeah.
You mentioned Boulder versus Buffalo.
Right. Different histories, different cultures, different overstories. It's not just individuals making choices in a vacuum. It's this invisible canopy influencing everything.
And that canopy can be powerful, sometimes in really destructive ways.
Yeah.
Let's look at Miami. Specifically, Medicare fraud.
Oh, yeah. Miami. So we meet Philip as Formies, described as movie star handsome, obsessive, and just incredibly good at fraud, like laundering $1 million before lunch.
$1 million before noon.
That's the story. His father, Morris, was an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, built a nursing home empire, big philanthropist, donated over $100 million.
Salute of the community, sounds like?
Mostly, but even he had a car horn that played the theme from The Godfather.
Huh. Okay. Little hint there.
Maybe. And Philip, maybe overshadowed by his dad, was desperate to make his own mark.
And Miami was the place to do it.
According to a rabbi who knew the family, yes. He testified that Philip lost himself after moving there, changed completely. From Philip of Chicago, the honorable businessman, to Philip of Miami, this ruined guy caught up in massive fraud. The rabbi literally said Miami cast a spell.
Wow. the city itself.
That was the feeling. And the prosecutor, Alan Medina, who grew up in Miami Beach, which he called the Alps for Medicare fraud investigators because the cases were piled so high.
The Alps, I like that.
He explains how Medicare's system, which is built on trust, was just incredibly easy to game in Miami, almost like it was designed to be exploited there.
How do they do it?
Layers of deception, using nominee owners who'd vanish when things got hot, setting up fly-by-night companies in these tiny fake offices.
Yeah.
He described a home health agency the size of a kid's bedroom.
Seriously?
Yeah, in some big office park. Or a healthcare mall where one guy was listed as CEO, CFO, everything. And crucially, they needed tons of cash for kickbacks.
Which is where the drug dealers came in.
Exactly. The drug dealers needed to launder their cash. The fraudsters needed cash for bribes. It was this perfect closed loop of criminality, a whole ecosystem.
The numbers must show this somehow.
Oh, they do, starkly. In 2003, Medicare spent, get this, $1,234.73 per person on durable medical equipment in Miami.
Okay, and elsewhere.
Compare that to $310.64 in Los Angeles, or just $208.68 in Minneapolis.
Whoa. That's not even close. It's orders of magnitude. What created that specific Miami overstory?
Yeah.
That feeling of impunity?
It's called the 1980 theory. Basically a perfect storm. 3 huge things hit the city around the same time and just reshaped its DNA.
Okay, what were they?
First, the drug trade went from kind of small-time mom-and-pop stuff to this massive flood of Latin American cocaine. Suddenly, 20% of real estate deals were all cash. People walking into banks with gym bags stuffed with money.
Unbelievable amounts of cash.
An IRS agent estimated maybe a dozen guys each deposited between $250 and $500 million in cash in Miami banks in 1980 alone. A tidal wave.
Okay, that's one. What's two?
Second, the Mariel boat lift. 125,000 Cuban refugees arrive, many with nothing. Desperate, maybe. Flexible about the rules.
A huge influx. Massive disruption.
And third,
The Arthur McDuffie race riot. A really brutal explosion of racial tension and violence that just tore the city apart.
so massive unregulated money, a huge vulnerable population arrives, and a major civic breakdown.
Exactly. Those 3 shocks together, they forged this overstory of chaos and impunity. The attitude became less, can I get away with this, and more just, use your imagination. The rules felt optional.
And that overstory sticks around.
It casts a long shadow. The sources mention a former CEO of a hospital system involved in billion-dollar fraud, later became governor, then senator of Florida,
Wow.
and Philippus forms himself. His sentence was commuted by a president who then moved to South Florida. It sends a message, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. That the overstory is real, it's tied to that place, it's powerful, and it keeps shaping behavior, even decades later. It's not just a few bad apples. Definitely not. Now, let's shift gears completely. From Miami's chaos to a very different place, Poplar Grove, but with its own powerful and ultimately tragic overstory.
Poplar Grove. Sounds nice. Affluent, tight-knit.
Totally idyllic on the surface, a feeling of safety and security, good neighbors. And get this, 100% of new families moving in have kids.
Wow, okay. Very
I
family-focused.
mean, the high school, one of the best in the state, something like 121 state championships in sports since the late 70s. Sounds like the American dream, right? Perfect place.
It really does, but there's a but coming, isn't there?
There is. Sociologists Anna Mueller and Setha Bruton studied it closely. They called it a monoculture,
A monoculture, meaning?
meaning very little social diversity. No space between the crowds, they said. There was a very, very clear ideal type of kid, and crucially, there aren't very many alternatives for kids to be different.
So, one definition of success, and immense pressure to fit it.
Relentless pressure. From the school, obsessed with rankings. From parents, hyper-focused on elite colleges. From the kids themselves, taking 4 or 5 AP classes, multiple sports, volunteering.
Sounds exhausting. What about rebellion? Teenagers rebel.
Barely. The sociologists said rebellion was so slight that you would need an MRI to detect it. It was just this suffocating pressure cooker of perfection.
And that lack of diversity,
Yeah.
that monoculture, that's the problem.
It's critical. Think about a typical high school. You have different groups, right? Jocks, nerds, artsy kids, skaters, whatever.
Sure, cliques.
Right. But those different crowds, even if they clash sometimes, they act like cultural antibodies. If one group gets into something destructive, say a drug trend or extreme academic stress, it tends to stay contained within that group, like a localized infection.
Okay, I said like fire breaks.
Exactly. But in Poplar Grove's monoculture, those fire breaks, that social diversity, that range of identities and coping skills, it just wasn't there. It was one highway, no exits, if you couldn't handle the main road.
There was nowhere else to go. Oh, no.
And the consequence was devastating. A suicide epidemic.
Oh, God. How bad.
Statistically, a school that size, 2,000 kids, might see 1 or 2 suicides in 10 years, maybe. Poplar Grove saw 20 deaths in a decade.
20, oh my God.
And it wasn't random. The epidemic was often fueled by the suicides of high-status students, the ones who perfectly embodied the ideal 4.0 GPAs, sports stars, leaders.
The ones everyone looked up to.
Exactly. And when they died, it sent this horrifying message. If they couldn't survive this, how can I? It made the unthinkable seem possible, even logical, turning individual tragedies into this terrifying social contagion.
That's chilling. Isn't there an animal analogy for this monoculture problem?
There is, uncannily similar. Cheetahs in zoos, you'd think they'd be fine, right? Peak predators.
Yeah, fast, fit.
But they had huge trouble breeding in captivity. The reason? Extreme genetic uniformity. They went through some population bottleneck thousands of years ago, maybe down to just one pregnant female.
So they're all incredibly closely related.
Super closely related. Their sperm was often malformed. And get this, they'd accept skin grafts from any other cheetah like they were identical twins. No immune rejection.
Wow. That lack of diversity made them fragile.
Exactly. Vulnerable to disease, unable to adapt. And the solution for the Florida panther, which had a similar problem.
They brought in other panthers, right, from Texas.
Texas cougars, yeah. Introduced this fresh blood, new genetic diversity, and it worked. Resilience shot up. They even nicknamed one particularly successful male panther, Don Juan.
Huh. Don Juan the panther.
He apparently sired over 100 kittens, basically saved the population.
So the lesson from Poplar Grove and the cheetahs and the panthers is that uniformity, even if it looks strong,
it sacrifices resilience. It makes you incredibly vulnerable, whether it's the disease or a destructive idea spreading like one. A high price for perfection.
Okay, so we've seen how these invisible overstories can steer communities sometimes towards a disaster like fraud or suicide clusters. But what happens when people understand these contagion dynamics and try to deliberately engineer the tipping points?
Now we get to the really tricky part, where the science of contagions, the tools we find, can be used with precision and sometimes with really thorny ethical issues. This is where that revenge of the tipping point idea really hits home.
Knowledge is a double-edged sword.
Exactly. The core idea is people act differently in groups once you cross some mysterious point of critical mass. Below it, one way. Above it, totally different. What if you could figure out that number and then nudge it?
It's not just theory, though, is it? People have studied this.
Oh, yeah. Rosabeth Moss Cantor, a sociologist, did groundbreaking work back in the 70s. She studied women entering all-male sales forces.
Tough environment, I imagine.
Incredibly tough. These women were often treated as tokens, not individuals, but symbols representing all women. Their actual skills often got eclipsed by their physical appearance or just stereotypes.
So Cantor looked at numbers.
She found it wasn't just if a group was integrated, but how much. If the minority group was below 15%, she called it skewed. Being a token in that situation is incredibly isolating. One woman on a board, maybe even 2, often doesn't change much.
But then there's a magic number.
That's what she found. The magic seems to occur when 3 or more women serve on a board together. She called it the magic third.
The magic third. And what happens then?
The whole dynamic changes. The boards become more open and collaborative. People actually start listening more. Different perspectives get heard.
You think about pioneers. Ursula Burns at Xerox, first black woman CEO of Fortune 500.
Right. She talked about being the only one, colleagues surprised she was still here. Or Indra Nooyi at PepsiCo, trailblazers. But since Nooyi, look at the number of Indian origin CEOs, 60 in the Fortune 500 by 2022.
That's not just individuals, that's a shift, a pipping.
Exactly. A critical mass changes the culture, makes it more robust.
And it's not just gender or ethnicity, right? There was that experiment with naming things.
Damon Santola's work. Yeah, fascinating stuff. He had groups try to agree on a name. Then he introduced dissidents, people pushing for a different name. How many would it take to flip the whole group?
And the result?
It was abrupt. Nothing much happened with 18% dissidents, 19%, even 20%. The consensus held firm.
But then?
But when it hit 25%, the magic quarter, he said, bingo! Something magical happened. Without fail, everybody switched. Instantly.
Wow. Not gradual persuasion, just a flip.
Totally. It shows beliefs and behaviors can be incredibly stubborn up to a point. Then, bang, you could be at 20% thinking you're getting nowhere.
When you're actually right on the edge of a massive shift.
Precisely. It's like individual opinions suddenly snap into a new collective alignment. And this isn't just lab stuff. Researchers looked at the achievement gap in schools.
Yeah?
In classrooms where black students were less than 5%, the math score gap with white kids grew bigger from K to 5th grade. But in classrooms where minority students were over 25%, that magic quarter, the gap, disappeared entirely.
Gone. Just based on the group composition.
Seems like it. Changing group proportions, even by seemingly small amounts, can have these huge impacts on outcomes.
Okay, so knowing these numbers exist, knowing these thresholds, it invites people to try and manage them. Which sounds good, but
Yeah.
ethics.
Big time. Look at the Lawrence Tract in Palo Alto back in the 1940s, a group called the Fair Play Committee, really idealistic folks,
What was their goal?
to create a genuinely integrated community, whites, blacks, Asians, to prove it could work, to fight against the white flight happening elsewhere. They even set strict rules about racial proportions to keep it stable,
A social experiment, basically.
a deliberate one. But then a crisis. A black family already living there wanted to buy the lot next door for a relative.
Okay, what's the problem?
It would push the African-American percentage past the magic third threshold the committee believed was vital to prevent white flight and keep the experiment going.
Oh, wow. So their own rules created this dilemma.
Exactly. Imagine that emergency meeting. People committed to integration now having to decide whether to block a black family to preserve integration as they saw it.
What did they do?
They voted to put the total welfare of the tract first. Pooled their money, bought the lot back themselves.
So they stopped the family from buying it.
Yes. Actively harming the very people they wanted to help, causing immense grief and guilt feelings, sacrificing one family to prove a principle. That empty lot just sat there for a decade like an open wound, a constant reminder of the painful compromises involved in explicitly managing these numbers.
That's a powerful and kind of heartbreaking example of the revenge aspect. Good intentions leading to real pain.
Which leads us to maybe more subtle, even hidden forms of this social engineering, like Harvard's athletic admissions.
Harvard. You think of academics, not necessarily sports dominance.
Right, but they have an extraordinary number of athletic opportunities. More Division I varsity sports than any other university. 4 times as many student athletes as a huge school like Michigan.
Why? What's the official reason?
The Dean of Admissions talks about athletes bringing something special, helping attract students, but given they admit only 3.4% of applicants, it sounds kind of thin.
So what's the real reason, according to the sources?
It's a mechanism, a very effective one, it seems, for maintaining specific group proportions in the student body.
Managing the numbers, like the Lawrence tract, but less explicitly.
Exactly. And it's not new. Back in the 1920s, Harvard and other Ivies had explicit quotas to keep Jewish enrollment around 15% Cantor's skewed level because they didn't want to become too Jewish like they thought Columbia was.
Wow. So they've been managing demographics for a long time.
Seems like it. Compare Harvard to Caltech. Caltech is mostly merit-based admissions, right? Their Asian American numbers bounce around 25% to 45% year to year.
And Harvard.
At Harvard, the Asian American percentage stayed basically flat for years, around 17–20%, and the white and other group consistently stays above that magic third. The pattern suggests deliberate balancing.
How does sports help with that?
Think about adding women's rugby in 2013. Described as foreign and violent, needs global scouting, 33 players. It's kind of tailor-made for a little extra bit of social engineering.
Meaning it brings in a certain type of student.
Largely white students, often from wealthy backgrounds, Shaker Heights, Marin County, fancy ski towns. Same with expensive junior sports like tennis, squash, rowing. It creates a pipeline for privileged kids who might have lower academic scores than other admits, but help maintain those desired proportions.
So it's a system that favors certain groups, intentionally or not.
And the irony is huge, especially with the Supreme Court cases on affirmative action, like SFFA v. Harvard.
Right, where universities argued they needed critical mass for diversity.
But they refused to give actual numbers. Yet this athletic affirmative action, which clearly benefits privileged kids, often white kids with lower scores, that wasn't challenged. It continues just fine.
While race-based affirmative action, designed to help underprivileged students, got struck down.
Exactly. As the author puts it, the wrong affirmative action was brought before the court. It just shows how deep this social engineering can run, often hidden in plain sight, shaping our most elite institutions.
Okay, this idea of engineering tipping points is powerful stuff. Now let's shift to another key idea, the law of the few.
Right. This principle says that in many social problems or contagions, things are profoundly asymmetrical, meaning a small number of people do most of the work or cause most of the effect.
We saw that in Poplar Grove, didn't we? Those few high-status students driving the suicide epidemic.
Exactly. Their actions had this hugely disproportionate impact. It's not just suicides, though. Think about pollution.
Okay.
There was this chemist, Donald Stedman, brilliant guy, invented a device to measure car emissions really accurately, like on the roadside.
Then what does he find?
Astonishing asymmetry. A tiny fraction of cars, sometimes just 1%, were responsible for like 50% of the pollution, these gross polluters.
Wow. So fixing just those few cars would make a huge difference.
Scientifically, yes, a clear path.
Yep.
But socially, really hard. How do you single out those individuals? They might be poor, elderly, can't afford repairs.
So society prefers to say we're all responsible.
Often, yeah. It's easier than confronting the uncomfortable truth about the exceptional few driving the problem.
Which brings us to bank robberies. Seems like a leap.
But the pattern holds. Bank robberies were almost dead in 1965. Only 847 nationwide. Then, boom, an epidemic. Over 9,000 by 1991.
And LA was the hotspot.
The absolute epicenter. A quarter of all U.S. bank robberies happened in LA, a real wildfire.
Was everyone doing it?
No, that's the key. It wasn't mass participation. It was a reign of mayhem driven by a small number of people who robbed over and over and over again.
Superspreader criminals.
Pretty much. You had the Yankee Bandits 64 banks in 9 months. Crazy. But then came Casper and Sea Dog. They masterminded 175 robberies.
175.
Casper was like a producer. He didn't go in himself often. He recruited others, organized them, sent them into the banks. He franchised bank robbery.
He was the superspreader.
Absolutely, creating this network. And this was happening when bank branches had tripled, making them everywhere. Shooting fish in a barrel, one investigator said.
So Casper is different from, say, Willie Sutton, the famous old-time robber.
Totally different. Sutton was an individual artist of crime. Casper was a vector, leveraging a network. It highlights how crucial identifying and understanding these exceptional few is for stopping an epidemic, crime or otherwise. But it raises questions.
Yeah, what do you do once you identify them? Which leads us right into COVID-19 and Mr. Index.
Right. One of the most dramatic recent examples, February 2020, early days of the pandemic. The biotech company, Biogen, holds a leadership retreat in Boston. Marriott Long Wharf.
That timing.
Terrible timing. 175 employees fly in from all over the world, meant to be inspiring. But then an executive gets sick. Soon, like 50 attendees are ill.
And it didn't stop there.
Not even close. It became a public health disaster. People flew home, went to other conferences, back to their facilities, spreading it everywhere. An investment conference, a PwC conference, Biogen's own site in North Carolina.
And they traced it back.
Using genetic sequencing, this incredibly powerful tool, they traced the Biogen strain back to one single person, dubbed Mr. Index.
One person.
Yeah.
And the final estimate of infections from him.
Over 300,000 infections. Global.
That's staggering. How could one person infect so many if it was just, coughing nearby?
That was the mystery puzzling public health officials. If spread was just by direct contact with big droplets, how could one person cough on hundreds of people? It didn't fit their models.
So what was missing?
Aerosol science, a field largely overlooked by mainstream public health then. While the WHO focused on big droplets from coughs and sneezes.
Yeah.
Aerosol scientists, engineers, chemists, physicists like Donald Stedman, again, they're saying, wait, the real issue might be talking.
Talking, not coughing or sneezing.
Their research showed vocal cords opening and closing during speech create these tiny fluid bridges, which form really small, light aerosols.
Like smoke.
Exactly. They float around like cigarette smoke, stay airborne for maybe an hour, travel way beyond 6 feet.
And talking produces a lot of these.
Potentially more than sneezing over time.
Right.
A 10-minute chat with someone infected but asymptomatic could be a major transmission event. It was a different way of thinking about spread.
Okay, but still, why wasn't every single crowded room a super spreader event then, if talking is the key?
Because asymmetry again. Some people just excel at infecting others. They're high emitters.
The high emitters, why?
Research by David Edwards pointed to 2 big predictors. Age and body mass index.
BMI.
Age and BMI, how does that connect?
Both are linked to dehydration, When you're dehydrated, the natural car wash system in your upper airway, the mucus, the cilia cleaning things out, doesn't work as well.
Okay.
So virus particles get deeper into the lungs. And then when you exhale, especially talking loudly, they come out in this concentrated, maybe even foamy spray of infectious aerosols.
So Mr. Index.
Likely older, maybe heavyset, and critically probably really dehydrated from flying internationally for 12 hours, dry cabin air.
The perfect storm for becoming a super spreader.
Exactly. His physiology, exacerbated by the travel, turned him into this incredibly efficient virus distributor.
Which brings us back to the challenge of knowledge. We can now, or soon will, identify these special few, these high emitters, right? With increasing accuracy, yes. But what do we do with that information? That's the huge question.
The ethical minefield.
Totally. Epidemiologists like Adam Kucharski warn about the massive risk of segregation and stigma. Do we start labeling people based on their biology? Where does that lead?
It's a profound dilemma. Privacy, discrimination, public health versus individual rights in a whole new way. We haven't really figured that out at all.
Yeah.
We've gone from individuals and places to the mechanisms. Now let's scale up again. Overstories for whole cultures, whole countries.
Yeah, this is getting closer to that German idea, zeitgeist. The time spirit.
The overall mood, the feeling of an era.
Exactly, that collective consciousness that shapes everything. And the big question is, can you rewrite that? Can you actually change a deeply embedded cultural overstory, a zeitgeist?
And the answer seems to be
yes.
a resounding yes.
Yeah?
Though it's often slow and weirdly timed, take the Holocaust. How it was remembered or not remembered in the U.S.
What was that like? For 15 years after World War II, nothing. No national monument. Widespread public awareness, museums, memorials. That really only kicked in the 1990s, half a century later.
That seems late compared to other wars.
Much later. Historian Peter Novick called it a strange rhythm of memory. Other major traumas usually get their defining cultural moments much sooner.
And even within the Jewish community, among survivors.
There was often silence. Survivors like Renee Firestone, Lydia Bugor, they talked about not discussing it, even with their own kids. Lingering fear, embarrassment, just the inability to put words to it.
And others just didn't know.
Ignorance was common. Some Jewish friends of survivors apparently didn't even know there was a Holocaust. It just wasn't part of the public conversation.
Even the word itself, Holocaust with a capital H.
Rarely used in print until the late 60s. Then, around 1978, usage just goes almost vertical. Skyrocket.
1978, what happened then?
The NBC miniseries, Holocaust.
Ah, the TV show. That was huge, wasn't it?
Monumental. Hard to overstate. NBC execs Paul Klein, Erwin Siegelstein. They decided to do this ambitious multi-night series, a big risk.
Filmed on location.
Yeah, in Austria, at actual concentration camp sites. The director, Marvin Chomsky, said even some local crew members couldn't believe it really happened. It was outside their own overstory.
And the show itself? It didn't shy away.
Not at all. Unflinching scenes. Casual brutality, the impersonality of the killing. Stuff never shown on mainstream TV like that before. Raw. Devastating.
Did everyone approve?
No. Figures like Elie Wiesel criticized it heavily, called it untrue, offensive, cheap for dramatizing something so horrific.
But its impact.
Undeniable. For many, maybe most Americans, it was the first time they'd really encountered the Holocaust in such a visceral, human way.
And the ratings.
Huge. 4 consecutive nights, 120 million people watched. Half the country.
Half the country.
And in Germany, 15 million watched. It directly led to them abolishing the statute of limitations for war criminals. New prosecutions started because of a TV show.
So storytellers really can change the overstory.
Profoundly. It didn't just inform people. It gave them permission to talk about it, to remember publicly. It created a shared memory where there was mostly silence. A massive act of cultural rewriting.
Okay, let's look at another huge shift. Gay marriage?
Right. Equally striking in how fast things changed, looking back. Early 80s, the idea was just off the map. Not a part of any social or political agenda.
Unthinkable.
Totally. The law professors told Evan Wolfson, an early advocate, that his idea was ridiculous. And pop culture reflected this. Remember that book, Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex?
Oh yeah, huge bestseller back then.
Its chapter on male homosexuality basically portrayed it as just a parade of penises, a deviation, not a basis for a relationship.
That was the zeitgeist, and it lasted a long time.
Decades. As late as 2004, George W. Bush was calling for a constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage. Activists had lost 30 state ballot initiatives in a row. They were despairing.
Thinking it would take decades more.
Yeah, 20, maybe 40 more years. But then Just within a decade, opposition to gay marriage had just withered away.
So fast.
Incredibly fast. Sasha Eisenberg called it the most significant shift in American public opinion in my lifetime. And the activists, they were looking for signs of change in all the wrong places, focused on courts, legislatures.
Well, the real change was happening.
Yeah.
Where? Television again.
The subtle, pervasive power of TV, even early progressive shows like Mary Tyler Moore in the 70s, they showed women succeeding professionally but often hinted it cost them personally, an ambivalent message.
And for gay characters, the rules were even stricter.
Much stricter. Bonnie Dow outlined them. Rule #1, never the main character, always about how their gayness affects the straight characters. A plot device.
Okay, rule #2.
Sexuality as the problem,
Yeah.
the central conflict. Vito Russo counted 43 dead gay characters in films up to the 80s, mostly murder or suicide. The message was grim. Being gay ends badly.
Rule #3.
Seen in isolation, no gay friends, no community. Reflecting this cultural disbelief that stable gay relationships were even possible, it echoed that parade of penises idea.
Even sympathetic portrayals followed these rules.
Often, yeah, like a 1992 TV movie doing Time on Maple Drive about a golden boy trying suicide because he's gay, moving but still framed as sexuality is the problem. The overstory held firm.
Until Will and Grace, 1998.
That's the argument. On the surface, standard sitcom. Straight woman, gay man, best friends in New York, but underneath, it was revolutionary.
How so? They were careful, weren't they?
Very careful. Sanded down every rough edge. Cast a straight actor, Eric McCormack, as Will. Made him a successful lawyer, not a stereotype. The director, Jimmy Burrows, even aimed to make viewers think Will might end up with Grace. A sexual relationship without any sex. Stealthy.
So how did it break the rules?
It broke all the old rules. Gay characters were central. Will and Jack weren't sidekicks. Homosexuality was not the problem to be solved. It was just part of who Will was. And crucially, they hung out with other gay people. They had a community.
That challenged the isolation rule.
Big time. The implied message week after week was, look at Will. Funny, successful, lovable, capable of love, he's normal, and he happens to be gay.
One of the creators even called it a gay conspiracy.
Kind of jokingly, yeah. We slowly fed this gay conspiracy to the American public, using pop culture to fundamentally shift perceptions, normalize gay lives.
And this connects back to the tipping point idea, the magic quarter.
Exactly. But on a massive cultural scale, while activists were losing ballot measures and despairing.
Up in the overstory, things were shifting. Quietly, because of shows like this.
Precisely. The ground was being prepared without anyone fully realizing it. Then 2012 comes, and suddenly, activists start winning ballot measures.
And when they asked people why they changed their mind.
Focus groups revealed the #1 reason: television.
Wow. Not political arguments, but TV shows.
Even staunch opponents like Senator Rick Santorum admitted it. He said, politics does not shape those issues. Popular culture shapes those issues. And then a television show came on the air called Will and Grace. The zeitgeist had been rewritten subtly, powerfully, through storytelling.
Okay, so we've seen overstories, tipping points, super spreaders, even rewriting the zeitgeist. Let's bring it all together now with the opioid crisis, a truly devastating epidemic.
And as research by Jessica Ho shows, fundamentally an American problem. Our drug overdose death rates are just way higher than other rich countries. That's large area variation right there.
Yeah.
Something different about the U.S. overstory.
But even within the U.S., it wasn't uniform, was it?
Not at all. Huge small area variation. Look at 2006 prescribing rates. Alabama, 808.8 morphine milligram equivalents per person. California, way lower, 450.2.
Why such a big difference? California had something special.
It had the Madden overstory, named after Paul E. Madden, this zealot, a really histrionic anti-drug crusader from way back in the 1930s.
And his focus was on legal painkillers.
Exactly, not street drugs. His elegant solution was the triplicate prescription law. California, 1939.
Triplicate, meaning?
Doctors had to use special state-issued pads for certain opioids. One copy for the pharmacy, one for their records, and one sent directly to a state bureau.
Ah, so prescribing wasn't private anymore.
Not for those drugs. It became a public act. Made doctors pause and think. There's a story about a Dr. Hausman arrested not for bad medicine, but just for failing to file his morphine prescriptions in triplicate. The Madden overstory, baked into law, had long-lasting effects.
Okay, so California had this built-in brake system. Then comes Purdue Pharma and OxyContin.
Right. Purdue develops OxyContin, first key move. They take out the acetaminophen, the stuff in Percocet that limited abuse because too much hurts your liver. OxyContin was pure, potent oxycodone.
Removing the governor's switch.
Good way to put it. Then, crucially, McKinsey and Company advises them. Focus your marketing fire on the super prescribers. The doctors writing way more scripts than others, the superspreaders.
Target the few who drive the volume.
Exactly. And where did they target them? Not in states with triplicate laws like California or New York. They went hard after states without strong oversight. West Virginia, Indiana, Nevada, Tennessee.
So they deliberately exploited the small area variation in regulations?
It appears so. They created and amplified the small area variation in the epidemic itself. The strategy was pinpoint.
And the data backs this up.
Clearly. Look at orthopedic surgeons prescribing from 2013-16. Few high prescribers in California and New York, lots in the Midwest and South.
And those top prescribers wrote a ton.
Unbelievable amounts. A decile analysis in 2013 looked at 6 million OxyContin scripts. The top 10% of doctors, maybe 2,500 of them, wrote a huge chunk. The top 358 doctors averaged 247 prescriptions each in just 6 months. These were the core and super core.
And Purdue knew who they were.
Oh, absolutely. These doctors, the sources say, weren't wired like most doctors, maybe more easily swayed by sales reps claiming low addiction risk, more willing to prescribe high doses, maybe just indifferent or oblivious.
And Purdue doubled down on them.
Increased sales calls to these specific doctors by a factor of 5 in some states, pouring fuel on the fire, directly targeting the superspreaders. It's a textbook case of understanding contagion mechanics and using them for profit, tragically.
Which brings us to the final twist, the reformulation. The revenge.
The ultimate devastating dilemma. Around 2010, the pressure is immense, right? Purdue reformulates OxyContin to be abuse deterrent, harder to crush, snort, inject.
A good thing, surely. Designed to save lives.
And it did achieve its immediate goal. Prescribed opioid deaths went down.
The unintended consequence.
Devastating. Users couldn't easily abuse OxyContin anymore, so they shifted to illegal heroin. And then, even deadlier, illicit fentanyl.
Pushing the problem from bad to worse.
Exactly. Look at the death charts before 2010. Prescribed opioid deaths were high, tragic, but about 5 times higher than heroin fentanyl deaths back then.
And the key difference is controllability.
Paradoxically, yes. A prescribed drug epidemic, however bad, operates within some kind of system. Regulations, doctors, pharmacies, levels you can pull, data you can track. Reformulation pushed it into the shadows. Unregulated, lethal street drugs.
Which leads to that craziest idea.
The author's bracing thought. What if a health official in 2010, knowing what we know now, had argued against reformulating OxyContin, had said, no, let people keep crushing it. It's bad, but it's better than them switching to fentanyl.
A wild policy prescription. Politically impossible.
Totally. Goes against every instinct.
Yeah.
But the author argues, given what we know now, it's the right one to have made.
To prevent the shift to something far deadlier.
Precisely. The ethical calculation looks completely different with hindsight and a full understanding of the system dynamics. This is the revenge of the tipping point in its starkest form. A well-meant intervention based on maybe incomplete understanding, leading to a far worse outcome. A chilling reminder that solutions can have hidden costs, interventions can backfire if we don't see the whole picture. Hashtag tag tag outro. So where does this whole deep dive leave us? We've seen epidemics aren't just random, chaotic forces, are they?
No, they seem to have rules, boundaries. They're shaped by these overstories, these invisible community narratives.
Right. Guiding us in ways we don't even notice, and they don't just grift, they shift sharply at these tipping points. Measurable thresholds.
Thresholds that can be engineered deliberately, sometimes secretly.
And they're often driven by the exceptional few, right? The superspreaders. Their actions, intentional or not, just have this outsized impact on where the contagion goes.
So the tools to understand this stuff, maybe even to control it, they're sitting on the table right in front of us, as the author says.
Yeah, from something seemingly small, like a TV sitcom changing how people think,
to huge, complex things like public health policy for opioids. Our actions, collective and individual, they have this immense power we often overlook.
We're all part of these systems, aren't we? Agents within the contagion, contributing to overstories, nudging tipping points, maybe even being super spreaders of ideas ourselves, good or bad.
Which forces some really tough questions on us. We're understanding how these things work better than ever.
But are we ready as a society to actually use that knowledge? to make those difficult, maybe counterintuitive, wild policy prescriptions sometimes needed to build something better.
Even when they challenge our assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
or demand uncomfortable sacrifices, or force us to face hard truths about responsibility.
Exactly. The knowledge might be there, but having the wisdom and the collective will to use it effectively, that's the real challenge, isn't it?
It really is. So maybe the final thought for you listening is, what overstory are you contributing to right now in your own life, your own community? What tipping points might you be influencing without even realizing it? And how does understanding these hidden forces change how you might act tomorrow? Something to think about until our next deep dive.